Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are here with another ranking video of my palettes. Since we have reached the end of yet another month, we're currently in the beginning of May, but since we have reached a new month, I'm going to go ahead and rank all my palettes that I used in April in sense or in terms of usage. So I'm going to go through with you the palettes that I used last month, all of them, and show you which one was my least used palette and which one was my most used palette, in that order, starting with the least one first. So that is going to be the video today, but before I jump into the palettes, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. So I used 11 palettes in the month of April, which I'm really happy with. I think that's higher than some other months, but I actually also have less uses in a lot of palettes, but I did spread my love a bit wider in my collection, which is good. But coming in last place, we have the Love Notes palette, and this one I actually only used once. I used one shade and that's it. I used the shade Pillow right here because that one was in my Big Fat Eyeshadow project, or well, this palette was in my Big Fat Eyeshadow project last month, 2 months ago now, in March. And I wanted to use that shade for Expand Those Pans, and I had one more use to go for that project, so I used it that one time this month, and then I haven't used this palette anything else apart from that. So one use on that shade right there. Then coming in the 10th space, we have a palette that I used 2 times, and that is the Norvina palette from Anastasia. This one I used one specific shade, and that was the shade Celestial right here, this purple shade, because I was panning that one in my pan of eyeshadows, and as you can see, I was able to pan on it. And 2 uses for this pan came in the month of April, so that is where this one comes in spot number 10. For spot 9, we are continuing on with Anastasia palettes, and we have the Holy Bible palette next. So this one I'm currently having in my deck of panning, and I wanted to pan on one of the shades in here. And as you can see, I haven't done that yet, but I did use 2 of the shades in here in the past month. And I used them twice each. So those were the shades Mandala. I used that one twice. And then this one right here, which I think is Bowley. Yeah, Bowley. So I used that one twice as well. So 4 times in total for this palette, coming in spot number 9. Also with 4 uses. So again, I mean, like spot number 9, spot number 8. Like these 2 palettes have the same amount of uses. We have my Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. And in here, again, I only reached for one of the shades. This is a palette that I'm not using that much right at the moment. I'm not into these super warm tones right now. I mean, I'm wearing quite a lot of warm tones today, but I'm using a lot of shades from my Panda palette, which is my Soft Glam palette, which has a lot of warm tones. So I haven't been reaching for this palette too much, but I did reach for one of the shades, which is this shade right here called Ripe. And that is because that one was in my Pan of Eyeshadows. So I used that one 4 additional times in the past month. For a total of 15 to be able to roll it out, so it's not out of that project. And again, it took me 4 additional uses in the past month, so that is where the 4 uses came from. In spot number 7, we have another palette that is in my Pandas eyeshadows, and that is the Going Coconuts palette. And the shade that I wore in the past month actually isn't in this palette because I have it in my singles collection at the moment, but I want to show you the palette, and I don't want to give any spoilers, so I'm not showing you that specific shade. But I did reach for that shade 6 times in the past month. I haven't touched the rest of the palette, but you know, I'm going to use all of that shade. So nothing too excited to show you in here specifically, but just note that I used this palette 6 times. So that palette had 6 uses, and moving forward, we're going to step up a little bit because the rest of the palettes are my Big Fat Eyeshadow project palettes, my Panda palette, and my Product Level Up palettes, which I also always get a lot of use out of. So coming in 6th spot, we have this palette right here, which is the Mini Retro palette from Natasha Denona. This one I used 13 times, which is pretty good for a 5-pan palette. I used all of the shades, I think, at least twice. So 2 times each, and then I used that shade 5 times. I believe I used the 2 grays 3 times? No. I used 2 grays 2 times, and then these 2 3 times. I can't remember. Something like that, but altogether it equals up to 13 uses. Actually, no, I'm just realizing, I think I must have used every single thing twice in here, apart from Galaxia, which I used 5 times. I think, because that would equal out to 13, right? Anyway, I got some good use out of this palette in the past month. Really, really happy with that. And yeah, it's getting quite well used. I already had pans on all of the shades prior to this month. but it was nice to be able to use this palette a bit more and expand those pans a little bit. Then next up for my Big Fat Eyeshadow Project palette, we have this palette right here, which is the Hey Reindeer palette. This one I used 16 times in the last month, so it puts this palette in 5th place. And yeah, I didn't actually use every single shade in here. It has 16 shades altogether, and again I have 16 uses on it, but some of the shades I used more than once. I believe the shades that I did not use yet is the shade Christmas Stocking, Bells, and Presents. So those 3 shimmers were this one here, and this one here. That's the only shades I haven't used yet, and I will make sure to reach for those in the upcoming months, so now in May, just to complete this one, No Pan Left Behind. But yeah, I really like this palette a lot. Again, I spoke about this one more in my Big Fat Eyeshadow Project, so you can check out my thoughts on this palette there. But yeah, 16 uses out of this palette in total in April. So the next 2 palettes, so 4th spot and 3rd spot, actually have the exact same uses. So we're going to start about one of them, which is the other Odense palette that I had in my Big Fat Eyeshadow Project. And this one is the Elva palette. And this palette got 21 uses in the past month, which is really, really good. This palette has 16 shades again, and I believe I used all of the shades. And then I did also use the shade Jasmine 5 times because that one was in my Expand Those pans. So I believe that's how I used it. And then I got 2 more uses somewhere else. I think some of the shades I used more than once. Obviously, I think 2 of them I used twice. But altogether, again, 21 uses. Really happy with that. I love this palette a lot. I really, really did enjoy all the looks that I made with this palette. And again, if you want to see 3 of the looks that I made, you can check out my Big Fat Eyeshadow Project because I shared them in there. But again, this one came in like shared 3rd and 4th spots. And then the other palette that I have that also has 21 uses is the final palette from my Big Fat Eyeshadow Project, which is the Tiny Marvels palette with Sydney Grace in collaboration with Mel Thompson. So this palette is another one that I really, really love, and this one looks like this, and it has 15 shades. Again, the shade Web right here, the top kind of light shade there, I had in my Expand Those pans, so 5 uses there. And I did also use this one, No Pan Left Behind, and again, some of the shades I used more than once. This is a beautiful palette, and it works all year round, but especially nicely for spring because it has a lot of pastel shades. And yeah, I just love this palette a lot. Again, I spoke about it in my Big Fat Eyeshadow Project. Sorry if I sound like a broken record, but yeah, I'm going to share most of my thoughts in there because I don't want to share it again because it was such a recent video that if you want to see what I think about it, just check out that video. But this one, really, really happy with 21 uses, and I feel like I got some love on it, so I can put it away to my collection. But I definitely think I'm going to use this one more in the upcoming months as well because I do really love this palette in my collection. So we have come to spot number 2, and that one comes to my Product Level Up palette, which is the At Foresight palette. I'm not going to show you the inside because my Product Level Up update will go up relatively soon, and I don't want to spoil anything for you guys, so I'm not going to show you the inside. But this one I have used 41 times in the past month, which is really, really good. Again, obviously, granted that with my Product Level Up, I had to use each shade in here 3 times and also hit 3 pans. And as of the last update with this palette, I had 1 pan only, so 2 more pans, which also going to provide a lot of usage because, especially with ColourPop pans, it takes quite a while for me to hit pan on. So a lot of uses from there, obviously, as well as the 3 uses per shade. So a lot of those uses came from this past month, which is why I have quite a high usage on this palette. So 41 uses on this run right here, and again, it came in my 2nd spot. So again, really happy with that. It's nice to show my palette some love, and yeah, 41 uses for me is really, really good. Then I am shocking absolutely no one with my top 1 spot again, and that is my Soft Glam palette, my Panda palette. This is probably going to be my top palette for majority of the year. However, the difference from this palette, like from 2nd to 1st spot with uses, was not as significant as it usually is because I was lacking on this palette a little bit in the past month. Previously, I've been around like 100 uses on this palette each month, but this month it only came in at 57 uses, which again is really, really good. And this is what it looks like now. I was actually able to hit 2 more pans in this palette in the past month, and if you haven't checked out my Panda palette update, that went up, I think, about a week ago. Or at least a couple of videos ago, so you can check that out again. But yeah, I did hit 2 more pans, which obviously helped me, as well as use the palette overall. But I'm really, really happy with how this is looking. And of course, if I want to finish this palette up this year, I'm going to have to keep my usage high like consistently throughout the rest of the year. So again, gonna sound like a broken record, but this one is probably gonna end up in first spot for the foreseeable, but that's fine by me. It also shows you that I am using my palette. But 57 uses on this one, and that was again my top palette for the month. So those were all of the palettes. Again, I feel like I didn't use as many eyeshadows in the past month as I have previously. I did use quite a few palettes, again 11 palettes, but I think the total times I used eyeshadows wasn't as high. And that's fine. I know for a fact that in April I was kind of feeling very light looks, very like ethereal. I didn't want to put too many shades on my eyes at one point, so like maybe like 4 or 5 eyeshadows rather than like 8, 9, which I sometimes go for. And that obviously means that I have less uses too. But I'm really happy with the kind of past month, and I'm expecting the numbers to be higher for May. But you guys are gonna have to wait another month to see those. Obviously, so do I, because we are just in the beginning of May. I'm filming this one on the 1st of May. So the look that I'm wearing now is actually the first look that I've made for the month. So again, I have no idea how the numbers are going to look in a month's time, but I will obviously come back and check in with you again at that point, just to share with you all of the numbers. But that is going to be it for today. I really hope you have a lovely day wherever you are, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys!